this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Quick repotting. This plant was singled out during watering as needing doing, basically. I did mention that this is not what most people would deem an ideal time of year to repot things, but I do have a problem. I have some cool growing plants, Masdevallias, Restrepias, some Cotyledons and my Miltoniopsis, that suffer a bit in the summer with the heat because they're cool growers. So if I repot those in the spring, the next thing that's going to happen is they're going to get stressed because of the summer heat. And certainly with Miltoniopsis, they can be stressed by anything. Absolutely everything, in fact. So to minimise the stress levels, the only stress this plant's going to get is being repotted. And hopefully it will have established itself before it gets warm again. So it's giving it the best chance it can have. Stuff I've got, my scissors are in the 70% rubbing alcohol. I've got my hydrogen peroxide ready to give the base of the plant, and the roots are going over in case there's any little snails or stuff. And as I've had a busy day today, I think I've earned that. I've done one video that I've posted. I've watered a lot of plants, thrown a few away. A bit of bravery on my part. You know, some things have just got to be thinned out. You know, I'm not keeping unhealthy plants unless there's a good chance of them picking up, like what this one hopefully will. And in addition to that, I've done an unboxing video. I'll post that later today when I've finished messing around. And I've got clips put to one side from today's watering that I can join in with some others. So I'm getting a nice little backlog. The idea being that tomorrow when I'm watering I don't have to film much because I've already got some in hand. So without further ado, let's see what's in the pot. I don't expect miracles. Looks like I'm not going to get any. To be expected. Yeah, this is a fibrous mix, and most of what's in it is not that happy. Who knows, there may... Oh, we have a nice mushroom smell as well. Do without that. I suspect there may be a sphagnum plug in the middle here. I'd be surprised if there isn't. Yep, there we go. There it is. That'll be the bit with all the dead roots as usual. I've explained in other videos my views on leaving sphagnum plugs. Oh, now I need to start going careful. There's some new roots at the base of that pseudo bulb. You know, we want those to stay. I don't expect there'll be any signs of new roots at the base of any of the other bulbs, but the fact that there are some on that one, we'll take care. Some of these roots are viable, and in actual fact there's some of the ones in the sphagnum plug that might be viable as well. With a Miltoniopsis I need to keep every single root I can. I don't want any that getting snapped or broken that are viable, so I am going gently. There are some dead roots in amongst here. We'll have to do a little bit of trimming, but I'm not going to go too mad on the grounds that it's very easy while trying to trim one old root off that you actually take off a good one, and they're valuable. Miltoniopsis stress, very easy. Right, so the rest of that's coming off under the tap, but that's better than I expected, but similar to what I expected. Sphagnum plug in the middle, you know, from when it was first potted out, I suspect, and then potted on without removing the plug. That's typical of the mass producers. That's what happens. We just have to get used to it and deal with it. But by using the tap to wash the worst of this out, the least possible damage will be done. I've seen worse root systems on Miltoniopsis and they've recovered. So I think we've got this one in time, and hopefully with some new roots pushing out. This one had its flower spike taken off a while ago, so it should be thinking about pushing out a new growth now, and I suspect there may even be one in under this sheath. I'm just going to have a gentle look. No, not yet. But this is the most likely place the new growth will come out, either here, or preferably both at the base of the latest matured bulb. New growths are unlikely to come out farther back, but I've seen that happen too, so I won't exclude it, shall we say. I've got an old bulb here that is a little lower than the other two. Well, that's easily accommodated by just tipping the plant slightly when I pot it, yeah? Because I don't want to take a plant down from 3 bulbs to 2 bulbs when the oldest bulb still has 2 leaves on it. Although they're not in the best condition and they're both bent, that's how they arrive due to packing, they're still green, so I don't want to take them off now. When they start going yellow, then they can come off. But some of these roots are dry, but Miltoniopsis roots can branch. So yeah, I'll get that one rinsed off then and have a bit of a clear up, and then we'll look at what's left. I'll be back. Okay, I've given the base a good rinse off, and I've had a bit of a trim. I didn't go too mad. I'll show you why. See if I can do this. That there, oh, where's my lens? Looks a bit like a dead root, doesn't it? So you trim it off where you think it's dead, and that comes off. That was a perfectly viable root. So don't go too mad with your trimming. Basically, you can go OTT and lose some good stuff, which is certainly on Miltoniopsis. There's still a few iffy roots on there, but most of the ones that are left don't seem too bad. I wouldn't say they're brilliant, but they're not too bad. Some are worse than others. So we do have a sort of root system. That's not a brilliant root system, but I've chosen quite a small pot. I try not to over pot things nowadays on the grounds that they stay wet too long. Now yes, Miltoniopsis don't like to dry out for any length of time, if at all, some would say. That's temperature related to me. The warmer it gets, the more they should not dry out at all. But this time of year, with the lower temperatures, if they do dry off for a day or two, they don't go down. They're not too bad. I put some chunky bark in the bottom on the grounds. It's an air cone pot, and I don't want this staying soggy in the bottom when it's drying at the top. I prefer to have an even moisture, and the best way to do that with an air cone pot is to make sure air can get in the bottom. So that's that. I'm going to use small bark. How much am I going to need? That much? Now, this bark is not too bad, but it does have odd bits of what's called whitewood, where slithers have come off of the tree and they're not necessarily bark. So I do like a little sort through. But generally speaking, the Orchiata bark's pretty clean, it's not too bad. And the small version of the Orchiata bark doesn't have the problem where it just will not wet for quite a few weeks. The large bark does, but this smaller stuff doesn't. I'm going to mix this, not quite half and half, but not far off it. I do want quite a large portion of sphagnum. Now I cut my own throat there. By adding the sphagnum to the small bark, it means it will come round for a repot sooner than it would have done otherwise. But the bark on its own is probably not going to supply enough moisture without me having to pour it in incredibly frequently. By adding the moss to it, I reduce my workload for the length of time the media lasts. And that will do me. And by trying to time repotting of things like Miltoniopsis and getting it right, you only apply one level of stress at a time, and they'll normally pull through that. You apply several levels of stress, like keeping it in bright light, letting the temperatures climb, and letting the roots dry out. It'll probably be brown bread, because they are fussy. They like good airflow for the same reason. Keeps their leaves cooler, so if you do get higher temperatures, keep that air moving and they'll be more tolerant of the heat. They still don't like it. It's a matter of what they will put up with and for how long. You know, if you live in an incredibly warm environment year in, year out, then Miltoniopsis are probably not the best plants to try. But I've seen people growing them in Florida, you know. I've seen people killing them in Florida as well, so, you know, you take your chance. Cool growers are what they say. They do best in cooler temperatures. Right, let me just rinse my hands a minute. Bits sticking to them. Right, and then we'll give it a go. We'll have a bit of that first. I'm running out of steam today. I've done a lot. Done a lot of filming. You won't see it all at once. It will come out in, you know, parts of other videos. But I'll have published 2 today. Not long ones, but 2. And I've got 1 ready for tomorrow. And this one will get added to either tomorrow or the day after, depends on how I feel. So let's go. A bit of the media suited to the roots in the bottom over the top of what I call crocking. I know it's bark. You could use other things for crocking that don't degrade. Those polystyrene peanut type things, bits of clay pots broken up, big bits of ceramics. There's all sorts of things you can use to crock a pot. I tend to use bark because I use that sort of media and I like it. I know others don't. Others prefer the inorganic stuff. Well, I like the organic stuff. That's just me. You don't have to follow suit. You can do your own thing. Now, the idea with this, I shall probably need a stake, and if I do, which is highly likely, I'll have to break off for a second because I didn't think ahead to get one ready, did I? And get my raffia out to tie it, and yeah, alright. It's getting to the end of the day, I'm tired. Now this is not going to be a fern pot, not with these delicate roots. And quite honestly, there's some types of orchids you really can cram the media in and the roots won't break, but these will. They're brittle. They're a little bit supple at the moment because they've just been run under the tap, so they're very hydrated, but they're not invincible by any means, and somewhere in there I've got some delicate little new roots, and I really do not want to put my finger across the tip and knock it off, which would be very easy to do. Now what I'm wary of is that this is the bulb with the new growths, with the new roots, and that's the place it's most likely to put its new growths out from. So that's the bit I want away from the edge of the pot, so that the new growths, should they happen, will come out with a bit of room to move. There are very, very, very few orchids that naturally grow with their pseudobulbs buried. They just don't. They sit on the top of things. So when you're potting, just think about that, and think about, you know, have you ever seen a wild orchid where half the pseudobulb is buried? And the answer is no. And if you've got a media like this that is very moisture retentive because of the amount of moss, you're heading towards rotting the base of either the rhizome or the pseudobulb. So just don't. The easy way is just don't bury the pseudobulbs. Keep them sitting near the surface. And in my case here, I can see my new roots still, and that's the bit that's going to get a more mossy bit, just over the top loosely, just so that they stay hydrated. Not pressed down. If I press that moss down now, I'll break those roots. So it's just on the surface. And that is it. And is it firm in the pot? No. So it's going to need a stake. I'll be back. Okay, my decision to stake or not is purely based on just giving it a little bit of movement, and that plant is not firm in its pot, and I'm not pressing that media down any harder. The problem is where to stake. Now that's the latest pseudobulb, and a perfect place for the stake would be down in front of that bulb and tie that bulb. but that's not where it's going to go, because that's where the new growths are going to come out, highly suspected. But because it's got a nice firm rhizome holding all three together, I can stake the smaller one behind that main one where there aren't any new roots. And by tying that one still, it'll hold the whole plant. I only need to tie one, at least I'm hoping. Best laid plans and all that. Oh, itchy nose. Right, let's see what we can do. As always with me, I always make sure I've got a firm knot on the stake, because I don't want it sliding up and down. But what I do want is it in the right place before I pull it tight, and the right place is down below the leaves. Let's get me end round here. If I'm going to tie that pseudo bulb, I need to grab hold of all of it, not just part of it. Right, move that down a bit. Now pull it tight. And that will pull that knot against the stake so that it doesn't move. Then I can come around the pseudo bulb. As I say, I'm not trying to cut off the moisture supply to the whole bulb. I'm just trying to give it a bit of firmness to stop it wobbling in the pot. That's not too bad at all. It just means that every time I pick the plant up, it's not going to start lolling around. That's all it's for. And by not tying it on the latest growth, I'm highly unlikely to interfere with any new growths. So there we go, that's that one done. And that is actually Miltoniopsis Junette. It was bought as a yellow Miltoniopsis, albeit a pale yellow. And when I got the blooms, the one that was newly opened was actually a nice pale yellow, and I was well pleased because I've been after a yellow Miltoniopsis for a long time. And then blow me, it turned out to be a colour changer, and it went from yellow, and as the blooms aged it became a nice creamy colour, almost a straw colour, and then those blooms turned pure white. So it went from a pale yellow through straw to pure white. So if it ever blooms again, you know, we can look forward to multiple colours in one go. Anyway, I need to put a tag in there, or I know somebody will be telling me off. And that'll do for that one. Yeah, Miltoniopsis, my guideline is don't repot them at any point in the year where the next thing that's going to happen is stress. And for these, heat is stress. Yeah? Reduce the stress by good airflow. They can almost take a draft just to keep those leaves cool. And keep them out of exceptionally bright light. They don't like it. And also that'll heat the leaves up. They don't like that. They don't necessarily like their roots being disturbed. They don't like being divided. Basically, they don't like the world. And anything you do to increase their stress level reduces their chance of recovery. So try and minimise the stress down to one item at a time. And hopefully this time of year, the only stress that plant's got is the fact that its roots have been disturbed. It's not going to go in bright light. It's still got some air in round there and coming up through the bottom. It will be in good air movement, and it's cool. So hopefully I've minimised the stress, and I won't say it will take off like a rocket because I've never had a Miltoniopsis do that, ever. But hopefully we will see some new growth in the not too distant future, and the few new roots that are showing have now got some nice fresh media to go into, minimal stress. And we'll see what happens. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by.